Welcome to the Veterinary Rehabilitation Podcast, where we aim to help fellow veterinary rehab therapists increase their knowledge and elevate their practice. I'm Megan Kelly.
And I'm Maia Lloyd. Together, we bring you the latest insights, research, and information in the field of veterinary rehabilitation.
This podcast is brought to you by Onlinepethealth, a leading continuing education membership for veterinary rehabilitation therapists. With Onlinepethealth, you'll have access to a wide range of online resources to help you stay up to date with the latest techniques, advances, and trends in the industry.
Our podcast features in-depth conversations with leading experts in veterinary rehabilitation. They share their own experiences and knowledge to help you improve your practice. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out in the field, our goal is to provide you with the tools and the insights you need to succeed.
So join us as we explore the exciting world of veterinary rehabilitation and help you take your practice to the next level. Today, I'm chatting with Francisco Maia from the Canine PT Academy. Fran and I chat about a topic which we are both so passionate about. It's the 5 pillars of marketing. Now, when Fran and I get started, we can talk for hours on this topic, and this interview turned out to be a really long one. So what we decided, we're going to break it up into 2 podcasts. So this week, we'll be chatting about how to get more vet referrals and word of mouth marketing. And next week, we're going to be chatting about organic traffic using social media, as well as advertising, and some tips on how to get your practice some PR. If you are looking for some tips on ways to market your vet rehab practice, I have a download just for you. It's called the 20 Free Ways to Market Your Vet Rehab Practice. You can access it at onlinepethealth.com/freeways. Before we head over to the interview, a quick word from our sponsor. Curacao Vet's founder and CEO, Dr. Nada Robinson, has been teaching science-based integrative medicine for nearly 25 years. She first developed her courses at the Colorado State University, where she started the Medical Acupuncture for Veterinarian Certificate program in 1998. In so doing, Dr. Robinson developed a science-based platform for veterinary acupuncture, and this was the first of its kind. Today, Curacao Vet offers a comprehensive curriculum in integrative medicine with a rational evidence-supported foundation. Courses include medical acupuncture, photomedicine, botanical medicine, medical massage, and integrative rehabilitation. You can discover Curacao Vet at curacao.org. Just a reminder that you have until the 18th of December to watch the Vet Rehab Summit recording, so please make sure you log in, watch the webinars, and download your certificate. So, are you ready for part 1 of the 5 pillars of marketing with Fran Maia? Let's head over to the chat. Hey Fran, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Meg. Very excited to be back here again.
Awesome. Fran and I today are going to be chatting about the 5 pillars of marketing. Fran is no stranger to Onlinepethealth. He's been on the podcast many times before. And for those of you that are avid business basics training watchers, you would have seen Fran a lot in our business basics section. So I thought he was a really, really good person to come on and chat about marketing. Fran, you know that marketing is one of my things that I absolutely love. I read loads and loads of books, and I know it's something that you also have a bit of a passion for. So yeah, let's dive into it. We're going to chat about 5 pillars of marketing.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. I could talk about marketing all day, so this is going to be a fun conversation.
Cool. So I was thinking, number 1, let's chat about getting referrals. So, when I think about referrals, it's not only from veterinarians that I'm thinking, but I mean, for me, when I was in practice, one of my primary sources of new clients was through veterinary referrals. And, in the days when I started, there weren't a lot of vet rehab therapists at all. There were like 2 of us in Cape Town. And it was in the days where veterinary rehabilitation was like, a lot of people didn't know about it. A lot of vets didn't know about it. And so in the early days, it was really difficult. And I actually, to be honest, really struggled to get vet referrals from the very beginning. But once they actually knew what I was able to do and started to see some clients that had gone through my services and had seen the results, then they started to actively refer to me a little bit more. And I would say, for me, probably the referrals was, I would say about 70% of the clients that I would receive. And that's what I'm talking now once my clinic was fully established. So 70% was from vet referrals. And what I loved about it is that it was, it wasn't a lot of work on my side. It was just continue to send vet reports, continue to nurture those relationships, and at the same time trying to build other relationships with new veterinarians that are coming in there. But it was something that really just happened, organically, and it made it really easy to get clients. But I know for some that getting vet referrals isn't as easy. And, I think that I had the benefits of being in those early days when it was sort of just peaking. And there wasn't a lot of competition, right, for me, because there were two of us in the whole of Cape Town, one in the one side of the Cape Town, and I was on the other side. So I really had the market. So that one was one thing that was really to my benefit. And I know that for some people, depending on where you are in the world, you might have a lot of competitors. And especially if there is another vet rehab that's established there already in an area, you come in and they've got vets that are already referring to other vet rehab therapists. How have you found getting vet referrals? Do you have any tips or advice on how you've actually succeeded in getting vet referrals? And let's hear from you first, and then I'll share some tips and advice on things which I think have worked for me.
Okay, wonderful. Because what I have found is like it can be a challenge for some folks, while for others it can happen more naturally, and depends a lot on the circumstances, like you said. For us particularly, it was a challenge. So when I first opened our business here in Chicago, for two main reasons. One was because there was a clinic that at that point in time had already been doing rehab and been open for about 15 years. So the local veterinary community was already so conditioned to send rehab patients to that clinic. But the biggest challenge actually was the fact that I was a physical therapist trying to build these relationships, and the veterinary community in Chicago 6 years ago, at that point in time, they weren't used to that. I was the first non-veterinarian in our area over here to really kind of like try to build this type of business, and now there are some more of us. So then they weren't used to like referring to non-veterinarians. And what I've realized is that for anyone, not just veterinarians, but clients or anyone to send a word of mouth referral, it's about trust on how you can help them and confidence on your work. So basically, I had to have a little bit of time to build that trust and the confidence. So in the beginning, I didn't focus too much on veterinary referrals because I realized that I needed it to get my business going. And I focused on Google and other ways of building my business. But over time, we were really able to build veterinary referrals. And that was a process that started about 3 years into business. So going back to 2020, 2021 or so, it was when we really started putting more emphasis on building new relationships with veterinary clinics, because at that point in time, we had been in business for a few years. And there was a greater trust and confidence on knowing our brand, knowing, the results that would give it to their pets. And because of that, then at that point, the same doors that sometimes were closed in terms of building relationships, 3 years later, they were more keen on me explaining to them how I would be able to help them. So we developed our strategy primarily through hosting lunch and learns to veterinary clinics. We were hosting 1 or 2 lunch and learns a quarter. We still do that because my goal I've realized is that if I can spend about 1 hour in front of a veterinary team, going through a presentation and really explaining, like, not the research behind rehab, not the research behind laser and the ins and outs of it, but really explain to them the framework on how rehab works and how it can benefit their patients and mutually benefit them, this partnership between rehab practitioner and veterinary team, then that has been like the way to make that work. So I'm a big numbers geek too, for those of you who know me. So I track all those things. And basically, back in 2020, about 15% of our patients used to come through veterinary referrals. Then we started these strategies. And then in 2021, that number went up to 22, 23%. In 2022, that number went up all the way to 29, 30%. And now this year, 2023, through the beginning of the year to today, we are at about 33 to 35%. So you could see this gradual kind of increase on building these veterinary partnerships. And It is a time game, and it is trust, and it is confidence, but it can be built. I think sometimes we just get a little bit deflated because it doesn't happen fast enough. And then we think, oh, this is not working, and I'm doing this lunch and learns and it's not working, or I'm meeting this people and I'm not getting any referrals. But you mentioned something that I think it's very important, and then I'll toss it back to you, where it's not just about building new relationships, but it's about nurturing the relationships that you have built as well. And that's something I realized that a lot of us fail to really emphasize. We're always trying to build, what are new clinics I can partner with? What are new veterinarians that I can meet? But how about the veterinary clinic that you did a lunch and learn a year ago, and at first you saw an uptick on them sending the referrals, but now a year has gone by, you haven't been in touch with them, so those veterinary referrals from that clinic kind of like started dying down a little bit. So we also develop a strategy in terms of like nurturing those relationships over time to make sure that the people, the clinics who we are building a relationship with, that we are maintaining regular contact with them too. And that, I think, it's very important to keep in mind.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the things that we struggle with is often we don't have time to do things like, create vet reports. But creating vet reports, for me, was one of the biggest ways in which I got referrals. What I would find is when I created a vet report, for a specific patient, I would send it. And then literally the next 2 weeks, I would get more cases from that specific veterinarian. And because it's a reminder for them that you're there, it's a reminder for them, a specific case that they've maybe referred to you or you're seeing, and then you send them a vet report showing the results. And they might speak to the client and say, if they haven't seen the client, they maybe give the client a call. And generally, you'll get some good feedback, especially if you've had a case that's done well. And then the vet's like, oh my gosh, I must send more of these cases to them. And the next minute a case walks in the door and they think, oh, I must refer this on. And that's what happens. And that's really part of, just nurturing those relationships. And, one of the things somebody actually said to me, when you go into a veterinary practice, what people generally tend to do is you say like, oh, I've got laser and underwater treadmill, and you list all the things. And the vets, to be honest, and if I just put myself back in the shoes of when I was a veterinarian before I did my CCRP, we really don't know really what those things do. And I think that it's probably a little bit different now. I think the younger generation are learning more about it. But the older generation, and that would be like vets that qualified. So I qualified 2001. We really didn't learn a lot about it. So when somebody comes in and they're saying all those things, it's actually, I think, for the vets can be a little bit off-putting, because they're in a position where they're supposed to know everything about animals. And, I have this all the time, like, for example, like, I'll be out for dinner with my husband and somebody will say, oh, like, I have this frog or something, and like, it's got this, and then ask my advice about it. And I'd be like, well, I have no idea. And they'd be like, but aren't you a veterinarian? And so there's this sort of perception that we know everything, right? Vets know everything about everything. So when this PT or vet rehab comes in and starts talking about equipment and things that we really don't know actually how they work and how to use them, it's actually a little bit of a like, just shut off, like, let's just stop this conversation. And then the vet rehabber thinks they're not interested. All right. But, so I can't remember who it was. It was actually in one of my Behind the Vet Rehab Practice podcasts. Somebody said, what they did is, instead of going in there and saying all of that, they just asked them, what are your most difficult mobility cases or musculoskeletal cases that you have right now that you're really struggling with? And then the vet would be like, I've got this case, this case, this case. And then they would say, well, this is what I can, or my practice can do for that case. And the vet would be like, oh my gosh, you can take them. Like, I don't know what to do anymore. I've tried everything. And that was like the biggest like eye-opener for me, like, just change the way you're actually speaking to them. And, if you think about business, it's all about solving problems, right? So here we are as vet rehabbers, we are solving problems. And for the vet, we can solve problems. They want to know we can solve their problem. Like you say, they can trust us to do what we're doing. And they want to know that you're going to look after their patient 100% like they're going to, basically. And if they know that, and they also want to know that you're not going to take business away from them. And I think that that's a big thing. That's a thing that's often come up when I have been chatting to vets, like, exactly what do you do? And like, what happens if the dog needs more medication? Then what happens? And so I think really reiterating that you're not there to replace them. You're there as a complement. And I think also really when you go to visit them and you do these lunch and learns, explaining to them that we work together, and also explaining to the client that we work together. And I think if you relay that communication to the client, and then the client, doubles up when they're at the vet saying, this vet rehabber that I'm seeing now, she really, really works so well with you. I hear everything that's happening. She tells me when you're communicating and what you said. And, if you really are sharing all of that with your clients and the vets, then the vet's not going to feel like, okay, she's like, trying to take over here. So I think those are some tips from my side, really. And just the vet reports, you don't let those slip, because people do. They'll be like, oh, well, I've sent, but every single time you send one, I promise you, the vet gets a little ding. Oh, yes, that vet rehabber, that's what they do. They can help me with those cases.
Yeah, the vet reports, it can be a great way to build that trust we were talking about, because it shows them that your knowledge, your skill set, and something in a way that they, like I said, they don't fully understand. And I've had clients come back after they had, like their checkup with their vet and stuff. And then the client told me that, oh yeah, the vet mentioned that they got the vet report and they were super impressed on, like, they said they never saw a rehab report as detailed and as helpful as yours, and I was like, okay, cool. That's the goal of it, because I know sometimes it can be very easy. I don't know. I think a lot of physical therapists in particular, we migrate to work with animals from working with humans, and we're so sick of documentation, because in the human healthcare model, documentation is kind of like, very, like there's just a lot to deal with it, basically, that it's not needed sometimes. So sometimes we want to just simplify as much as we want. And that's okay. I do understand that we need to simplify and make life as easy as possible. But one area I never try to kind of like cut corners was my vet reports, because I thought it was so important to show them, like, yeah, this is the evaluation that I did with the patient. This is what we found. This is the plan. And this is where we're going over the next few months, basically, so they can see what's kind of like the plan going forward.
I tell you, it's another thing that I was just thinking now as you're chatting is, there's obviously vet referrals, but there's also referrals from loads of other pet professionals. And I've actually got a training that I did. I think I did it at the 2021 Vet Rehab Summit. It's all about networking and how to network. And, if you think about it, and if we're just thinking, now we're talking because you and I are more small animals. So we're talking about a small animal vet rehabber. There are people like that do poodle parlors, so washing and clipping of dogs. There might be dog trainers. There might be dog whisperers, or, there's so many different people, right, that are in association and in contact with the same clientele as us, and building relationships with them. And potentially, it really is a two-way thing. So it's not just you getting referrals from them only. When a client comes in and they're like, I need a good parlor that's going to be able to like clip my dog and not let my dog slip or fall or hurt themselves because they're really arthritic, then you'll say, well, these are the people for you. So you'll establish these kind of relationships, and then it's back and forth referral. You're referring to them, they're referring to you. And I think that a lot of vet rehabbers underestimate relationships. So whether it's relationships with the vets, but relationships with everybody else. And a good thing to do, actually, and I recommend this to all the vet rehabbers that I mentor in business, is actually in your area, is to create a pet business network. So if there isn't one already, be the person that creates that. And you can create a little WhatsApp group. It's a great way to be able to phone people, because you can phone and say, hey, this is who I am. I'm creating this pet business network. Would you like to join? put everyone on a WhatsApp group once a month or once every 2 or 3 months, meet up for coffee, network, everyone helps one another. And when you're the person who initiates all of that, you're the person that everyone is like, okay, well, this is the person in our area. And it gives you a little bit of authority too, you know, and really helps with just establishing yourself and getting referrals. So that's something else that I would definitely recommend. If you haven't done already, or if somebody hasn't done it, if someone's done it, then you just ask to join. If no one's done it in your area, then you can be that person.
Yeah, and I think that those are good points, that networking is not just about network with veterinary clinics, but other types of business, pet businesses and non-pet businesses too, you know, something to keep in mind as well. But speaking of pet businesses, you know, like in the last 10 years or so, there's been an explosion on all sorts of different business, like you said, from dog massage therapists to boutique stores to doggy daycare to dog play rooms, like you name it, you know, that there are like pet businesses that you can build their relationship. And what I tell my students is, whenever you go into any sort of networking, is to be interested and not just try to be interesting, you know. And basically is a little, it's what you said, it's like you got to give first before you receive. You can't go to try to build a new relationship with anyone and just being like, oh, hey, here's me, I'm Francisco, I just opened this canine rehab facility, how about you start sending me dogs, you know, like you're not going to build a relationship that way. And it's kind of like, even in the real world situation too, like in our lives, right? I've been married for a while now. I haven't been on a date, you know, on a first date, I should say. I haven't been on a first date in like 17 years now. But when you go on a date, if you go on a date with someone who all they talk about is themselves, all they talk about is their work and their accomplishments, and they don't ask a single question about you, about what you enjoy, about what you do, like, you know, you're going to come out of that date being like, yeah, like I'm not going to go on a second date with this person. And it's the same thing in business. If you go and try to meet a veterinary clinic, try to meet a pet owner store, try to meet another business, and you just go there and you talk about what you do and your credentials and your training and who you help, like it's going to come out that like they're not getting anything from this partnership, basically. So we got to keep that in mind, I think, when building these networks that you talked about.
Right, so we're going to go on to the next one. But before we go on to the next pillar, which is word of mouth, I've got one little tip about the networking. So I used to have this little black book. So not with names of boys in, but basically this little black book, and it was like, you know, one of those like alphabetized ones. And I used to have all the people that I was networking with. I would have them inside there, and the veterinary practice. And because especially when you're speaking to lots of people, whether it be clients and video, my memory is shocking. Like I could never remember things. But I would write in there. If I went it was in my car, if I popped into a vet practice, I would write the name of the receptionist if I met them, something about them, because I would generally say like, how's your day or whatever, or maybe they might tell me the name of their dog, or they've got a kitten or whatever, and I'd write all those things in. And then before I went in again, I would go through, and it might also be something about the veterinarian, something the veterinarian said, something personal, whatever it is. I will remember their names, and whether it be the receptionist, and the receptionists and the people that are behind the front desk, those are called the gatekeepers, and those people are key. So if you can get it there, they actually refer cases to you. They'll say, oh, there is this place, and let me try and see if I can find their card. And that's especially when the vet's busy and maybe they're forgetting. So that little black book is so important when you're driving around, because you want to go there and you want to remember them. And when you remember them, it makes them feel good about themselves. Yeah. And they're more like, okay, I'm going to refer to this person. Okay, so let's go on to pillar number 2, word of mouth. So this was probably my other source of new clients. And that was generally from the clients that I'd already seen. So clients that I'd seen would obviously tell other people. And I think for the majority of vet rehabbers, this is our one. This is the one that most of us get. And I've done a few surveys, and it always has come out tops. Word of mouth, that's how we get. And we've just actually done a vet rehab industry report. And I don't have the stats with me, but it was the top way that people say that they get new clients. So I'm not sure the exact percentage, but it was for everyone, literally, that was the way. So one of the things, what we generally do about word of mouth is we just leave it up to chance, right? So,
Right.
I mean, if you think about it, no one's intentional about word of mouth. They just you just think like, if we do a good job and, we have great outcomes and we're nice to our clients, then people are going to talk about us. But there is a book called Talk Triggers, and I actually did a lecture at business conference, a veterinary business conference once before on this. And I don't know if you've read it. Have you read it? By Jay Bauer.
No.
You must read it. It's really interesting. It's about being intentional about word of mouth. So basically having something about your practice, and I mean, it doesn't have to be about veterinary practice, it can be about any business you have, something that's super intentional that people can't help but talk about. And so it's things like, there is a veterinary practice that has this. It's got like a massive, like, inflatable dog, and you have to like walk through to get through the practice, for example, and every day they like blow this big dog up, and you walk through, like the doors are like around and surround the doors, and that's the kind of thing like people are going to be like, oh, the vet practice with the big blow up dog, so that's the kind of thing. That's a talk trigger. And so, yeah, just encouraging all of you guys to think about something that you could create. It doesn't have to be a big blow up dog, but something that you can create that people will talk about. And it has to be something out of the ordinary. So it's something that people wouldn't expect. And I think really what happens is we are put on a par with veterinary practices. So, I mean, people think about the experience that they have with us. They're very similar to a vet practice. And I want to say that majority of vet practices, although there are some new ones that are coming out now that are really changing the customer experience, but most of them are very standard. They have the same type of experience for each client. So you got to think about something that is just going to be like, wow, so it has to be something that someone is going to leave and say, you're never going to believe it, but I was at this vet rehab practice and this is what happened. So, some of the things like I've thought about is, but the thing is that it has to be sustainable. So these are the things you have to be able to duplicate it for everybody, right? So one of the things I was thinking, if somebody comes in, then you can make little bones with the dog's names on, but how sustainable is that? So you got to think about all like little things that you can do. So for me, at my vet practice, normal veterinary practices never offered people tea, coffee, cappuccinos, and had a little biscotti. So at my practice, people would come in, and the first thing they got offered in the consult room was a tea. And we used to bring tea out, proper little China tea with a little teapot and a little biscotti. And my clients used to absolutely love it. And we used to have clients that used to just come in just for tea. So they wouldn't even bring their dogs. They were just driving past and they would come and have some tea with us. And I think probably for me, that was probably a talk trigger. It's like, what veterinary practice does that? So there's an idea for you guys. And, I had to employ somebody, obviously, to do that. We had, everyone was doing it. And then eventually we got so busy, we had literally somebody who was just making the tea for all the clients, but it also relaxed them. It calmed them down. And there was a lot of positives to that, not just a talk trigger. So I'd love to hear from you, is there anything intentionally that you do to get word of mouth? And sort of how is the word of mouth for your practice?
Yeah, I think, a couple of things I took note while you were talking is like, first of all, the customer experience, and that not just for word of mouth, but I think for everything, like we got to start with that and then build the business backwards, considering what is the experience that we want our pet parents, our clients to get when they walk through the door. I feel that that's so important, especially as the field grows and there's more competition, there's more clinics around us. What is going to be a way that you're going to stand out, right? And I've shared this story, I think, on my podcast before, where this was about a year ago now. I was hosting some of my mastermind students here at the clinic for the weekend, and a few of them came over that Friday before the weekend to spend the day here at the clinic just to see kind of like the flow of things and whatnot. And that particular day, we were finishing our expansion, and we were using for the very first day our new lobby that, for the clinic. And because it was the very first day we were using the new lobby, it wasn't fully furnished yet. and we didn't have in the new lobby the mini fridge that we have with some drinks available for clients. And literally that Friday morning, just that morning, 3 different clients made a comment along the lines of like, where's my LaCroix? Where's my drink? You know, and one of them kind of joked, but I think he was kind of serious that he said, he was like, this is the main reason I bring my dog over here, because so I can sit back and have some LaCroix while my dog gets pampered. You know, and literally that happened with 3 different clients just that morning. So then that weekend with my mastermind students, we talked about that in terms of like, it became a little bit of an internal joke of like, what's your LaCroix? Meaning, what is that you're creating that ultimate experience that it goes beyond like their dog, it goes beyond their dog getting better, but in terms of them wanting to be there in the building with you and keep returning to see you with their dog for months and years to come. So that was the first thing I wrote down. And then the second thing was, you know, in terms of the word of mouth referrals, that it can be a terrific way to grow a clientele, to grow a business. But I think it can be a real challenge in terms of making it predictable, you know, and you talked a little bit about that. And I do feel that's one reason why so many rehab clinics go through so many ups and downs in terms of how busy they get, how many new patients they get. Because word of mouth referrals are unpredictable by nature. You know, if you just let it be, if you're not proactive about it with some of the things you talked about, some months you're going to get tons of word of mouth referrals. Some months you're going to get a few, maybe none, you know. So the challenge is how to make that predictable, how to build systems around it where you incentivize people to give their referral to you. And I don't mean incentivize in a financial way or anything like that, but basically making it easier for them to do so. Because one thing is that usually people are not thinking about it like, oh, who I can send here, you know, that needs help. They might, if their neighbor's dog has an ACL injury or something like that, then they're going to be like, oh yeah, you know, you should go and check out so-and-so. But on a daily basis, not really thinking about it. So it's like, okay, how do we build systems around it where basically we're not making our clients our salesperson, we're just making them the middle connecting type of person. So maybe we're giving them some ammunition, some materials to provide to someone who might benefit from this, right? So maybe if they had a conversation with their neighbor and their neighbor mentioned how their older dog is slowing down, they don't need to necessarily be the ones who are like, hey, yeah, you need to take your dog to go see Francisco the Canine PT. They don't need to be the salesperson. But what can I give in terms of like physical education material for that person if they tell me that, oh yeah, I was talking to my neighbor and this and that, you know, what can I give them before they leave the clinic to be like, hey, can you give this to your neighbor? Like, here's a newsletter that educates about how we help dogs that are aging and dealing with arthritis. Could you just give this to your neighbor? And then if they have any questions about it, they can give us a call and we were able to answer their questions. So basically you create a little bit more of a bridge. So that way, even the client doesn't feel pressure basically to give a referral to you, which sometimes I think it can be the drawback, because I've heard, especially more veterinary clinics, more than rehab clinics, offering like, oh, if you, for every client they refer, you're going to get a $10 off your next visit or something like that, right? And that can work, but personally, at least for me, I feel like when you start attaching like a financial thing to it, it can also make things a little bit kind of like stuff. So I rather not making them my salesperson and just making them my connecting people and basically give them the information that hopefully they can provide for whoever it is that might benefit from our services.
Yeah, I think what's really important is that you ask your clients, like on the registration form that they fill in, you know, where did they hear about you? Because this is going to help with, you know, was it a referral? Was it a word of mouth? And if it was word of mouth, what is the client? Who is that client? Because what you'll find is you'll have about 5 or 6 clients that are just referring all the time to you. And you really want to show them your appreciation, you know. So like just sending a message or picking up a phone and saying, oh, thank you so much for referring Cuddles. We're seeing him next Friday, or we've just seen Cuddles. Thanks so much for your referral. A bottle of wine or some biscuits next time they come in, or some flowers or something, just to say, like, we really appreciate you. Not necessarily monetary, but just showing your appreciation. You don't even have to buy them anything. Sometimes just a thank you and a recognition for them is really enough. So yeah, just remembering to recognize the people that are there shouting out about you.
Yeah, that's important too. Like, yeah, recognize, because like you said, there's going to be those that are just going to send, more people to you than anyone else. And we do that now too. We have like our quarterly like referral award kind of like stuff. And it has been a great way also, going back to networking with other pet businesses. It has been a great way to network with other pet businesses. So for example, this quarter, what we're doing is at the end of the quarter, the top referrer is going to get a play session for their dog at this other pet business locally, that it's a doggy playground play kind of place, So suddenly we are promoting this facility to our clientele. That facility is promoting us to their clientele. It becomes, I feel like, a win-win to also build a relationship with other pet businesses around you. If your recognition for like a top referrer or something like that is maybe, giving them something that it allows them to maybe go to a pet store and, like a gift card to a pet store that you partner with or something like that, right? So something that then it can build multiple relationships at the same time.
Nice, I love that. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I load a new podcast. I'm here every week talking to vet rehab therapists from all over the world about all things vet rehab. A big thanks to our sponsor, Curacor. Their sponsorship allows us to be able to give this podcast to you for free. So please go and check them out at curacor.org. Don't forget to bookmark the next Vet Rehab Summit. It's on Saturday, the 31st of August, 2024. Come and be a part of the world's largest online veterinary rehabilitation conference created specifically for you, the vet rehabber community. Online Pet Health members get VIP complimentary access to the Vet Rehab Summit. For more information about continuing education for vet rehabbers, you can go to onlinepethealth.com.